Hello, and welcome back to another nail video. And we are continuing on with our mini series 31 Nails of Halloween. And I have been having so much fun. I cannot believe that the month is almost over. Thank you so much for staying tuned. My real life ghost story. Years ago, I was living outside of Buffalo, New York, on an old estate on the Lake Erie shore. I rented the carriage house of an old mansion that a doctor and his wife owned. The doctor was a heart surgeon, and they were a well-to-do couple with multiple properties, so they weren't around that often. I liked the solitude of the place. Having just gotten divorced, and although the carriage house was slightly decrepit, I loved living there. The mansion looked over the lake, and my house was close to the road, off a private drive that went from one side of the estate to the other. The carriage house had been servants' quarters for whoever lived in the mansion at the turn of the 20th century. There was an enclosed courtyard outside of my door that was bordered by the back of the house. The carriage barn, which had stored carriages back in the horse and buggy days. A row of empty horse stalls and a brick wall with an entrance into the courtyard. It was a very cool place to live. The rent was cheap, and there was a private 150-foot beach that was hardly ever used by anybody but me. But it was very isolated. If there was nobody staying in the mansion, and there weren't any close neighbors because all the houses along the road were big estates, and a lot of the rich people living in the area weren't full-time residents. But I was young and brave, and it was a big estate full of decaying spookiness. And I'm a weirdo like that sometimes for that kind of stuff. I was very overjoyed to find this place. One night, I was coming home late, around 1 a.m. from a friend's house. Driving down a street a mile or two from my house, I saw a dark figure up ahead, standing close to the road. I thought it was kind of odd because it was late at night on a weekday, not exactly party time in the Buffalo area. I started to get a little nervous because the person was standing as if they were waiting for someone to pick them up. And as I got closer, I could see they were wearing an unusual black-like shroud thing, long and dark and draped with a part of it wrapped around the person's head to look like a hood. Similar to someone wearing an abaya and a hijab, only much looser, like a bunch of material just wrapped around someone's body. It seemed totally inappropriate to what I knew of the people that lived in this area to wear. And certainly not outside at 1 o'clock in the morning on a weekday. The person was just standing by the side of the road, looking stooped over and old. I slowed down to a crawl as I approached, worried that that person needed help. Maybe it was an old person that had walked out of their house in the middle of the night, confused. When I got close enough to really see the person, she lifted her head and looked my way, and I saw that it was my ex-mother-in-law. I was absolutely, positively sure it was her. The same gray-brown hair, the same eyes, The same smile that had always made me wonder what she was thinking about, but never seen. She raised her hand and waved at me. Not a stop to help me wave, but more of a gosh, it's good to see you wave. It scared the hell out of me. My mother-in-law had died 3 years previous to when I was driving down that road. I sped up and kept driving, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. But after a few moments and a few deep breaths, I told myself I should go back and take another look. My mother-in-law had loved me. I couldn't imagine her ghost would appear seeking revenge on me for divorcing her son, who had not treated me well, to say the least. I drove in the square by making left turns and went down the same road again, but there was no one there. I was too freaked out to go back to my spooky carriage house with the weird sounds and 100-year-old history, with nobody there but me and the ghost I was convinced probably inhabited the place. So I drove to the local all-night Greek diner and sat there for an hour drinking coffee and calming my nerves. When I finally drove home and into the courtyard, I could see that something was wrong. My door was standing open, the glass windows broken. The door cracked almost all the way from one side to the other. Someone had destroyed the door to get into my house. The next day, I found a crowbar in the courtyard thrown off to the side. The only things I noticed missing from my house were a few pieces of my clothing, super creepy, and a jar of loose change, and a knife from the kitchen. I was just divorced and not exactly rich. I didn't have much worth stealing. It's very scary when someone breaks into the house you live in all by yourself in an isolated spot. They must have driven right into the courtyard and would have been hidden from view while they broke down the door. With all the upset of the break-in, it wasn't until hours later that I remembered seeing my dead mother-in-law waving at me from the side of the road, dressed like the Grim Reaper. I'm convinced that she somehow appeared to delay me from going home. That if I had driven straight to the carriage house, whoever the person or persons were who had broken my solid wood 100-year-old door practically in half with a crowbar might have been waiting there for me, or I could have surprised them, and that things might have turned out very differently, maybe very badly for me. Now I write fictional horror stories. I even wrote a whole ghost story novel. But this story is 100% real life true. I swear on my ex-mother-in-law's grave it really happened. You might even say that seeing Mom by the side of the road that night is part of the reason I write scary stories. So, it's my recommendation that people should remember to be nice to their mother-in-law. She might help you out one day, even after she's dead.